And hi again, everyone. We welcome you to another edition of After Further Review. I'm Dave DeNatale, along with Jay Crawford. The Cleveland Browns now in their final week of the 2020 regular season at 10-5 after a 23-16 loss on Sunday to the New York Jets. And Jay, I mean, there are so many things to pull apart from Sunday. And by the way, head to WKYC.com and read Jay's column about the loss and about the weekend. And it really, a lot of what happened to the Cleveland Browns Sunday really started with what happened on Saturday.
Yeah, it did. Saturday morning, the first positive test, well, the only positive test in this round came in, and it kind of spiraled downhill from there. Really, once the weekend hit, the curse of the Browns was in full effect. You had the first positive test, again, the only one, to Goodson, and then you lose 5 players due to contact tracing. What Goodson is doing hanging around with all the wide receivers, I'm not sure, but that's a story for another day. Regardless, the way the NFL contact traces, it was deemed that 5 other players, including our top 4 wide receivers, had been in what they call unsafe contact, essentially, high risk exposure to Goodson. So they were all, despite the fact that they tested negative for the coronavirus, we know that you can be exposed to the virus and there's an incubation period where you would have it, but test negative. So because of that, to avoid any risk of further exposure, the league's protocol is anybody that's at a high contact or high risk contact with an infected player also has to quarantine, and they too are inactive. So you throw 4 receivers, 2 starting linemen, 2 starting linebackers out of the mix, and it was a recipe for disaster. You could see it coming, like most of these Cleveland meltdowns. You saw this one coming from a long ways away. Saturday night, you're watching the Dolphins inexplicably pull victory from the jaws of defeat because John Gruden is the most overrated coach maybe in the history of the NFL, and that's saying something. But John Gruden and his mismanagement of that game let the Dolphins win, and then you kind of felt like, boy, this really isn't shaping up to be a good weekend for the Browns. And it was a fait accompli when they took off for Cleveland 4 hours late. You just knew there was no way this was going to have a positive ending. The players were so unfamiliar with what the Browns were doing, the recent call-ups. They were actually going through a early morning hour walkthrough in the parking lot of their New Jersey hotel, trying to familiarize these guys with what they need to do and where they need to be. Common sense would say that if you're down your top 4 receivers, you have the 3rd best rushing attack in the NFL, and you're playing a 1-13 team, that you're going to be heavy run. But instead, the Browns threw the ball 53 times compared to just 18 runs. You know, Dino, I've been complaining about the pass-run ratio all year. It's been out of whack all year. It hasn't made sense all year. So on a day when you're down 4 receivers, your pass-run ratio is 3-1. That doesn't make sense. I know Kevin Stefanski will look at the tape and question why they decided to suddenly maintain this insistence in being a passing team, but the proof was kind of in the pudding. They ran the ball 9 times in the first half for a grand total of 4 yards. So I don't know. Maybe they just had realized that the Jets' game plan was pretty simple. We're going to stack the box, stop the run. They don't have a single receiver that we're afraid of. No one can get behind our defense. What I didn't understand, though, Dino, is why we didn't just come out 3 tight ends and just, I mean, these guys are all starter caliber players. We've got really good tight ends. I didn't understand why we didn't lean heavily on the tight ends and just kind of do that extended handoff, 4 or 5 yard passes. That's just as good. 4 of those is as good as one 25-yard pass. So I'm really, really disappointed in the execution of the game plan. And also the Jets, forget 1-13. Their incentive was far greater than the Browns. They looked like the team that wanted to win, and the Browns looked like the team that was just trying to get the hell out of there and get back to Cleveland.
That was my biggest frustration I took away. It's like, I said this on Twitter to people. I get that you had really 2 position groups, actually 3 position groups, linebacker, offensive line, and then certainly the wide receivers that were compromised because of this. I get all that. That's difficult for anybody, but that doesn't count, defensive players being out of position or missing tackles, dropping passes. Kareem Hunt dropped a couple. And just like you said, just getting pushed around on the line of scrimmage, both sides, particularly when the Browns are on the offense. They got pushed around, and it reminded me a little bit of that Raider game. Yeah,
they did. They just looked like a team that lacked motivation. There's no other way to say it. And that's inexcusable, Dino. I love the fact that Stefanski and Baker after the game made no excuses. Flat out took all the blame. Stefanski, we got out-coached, we got outplayed. I'm not going to use an excuse that we had to use so many backups. Good, because it's not an excuse. You're in a playoff fight. They're scoreboard watching. I'm sure they saw that the Steelers were coming up and winning that game at the end. Look, they were in position to get this thing done. I don't know why on 3rd and 2 before the Baker fumble, I don't understand. They're so reluctant to use Chubb and Hunt. They're so reluctant to use these guys. Chubb has been an MVP caliber player. You need 2 yards to keep your season and your dream alive. Give them the freaking football. And then on 4th and inches, I understand the sneak had been successful a number of times with Baker. But let's just talk about the common sense of this. 3rd and 2, season on the line. Who do you want? What play you calling? It's pretty easy for me. And same with 4th and 2 as well. I'm just gonna let it ride or die on Nick Chubb. And I don't get it. I really don't get it, man. It was really mystifying because as good a job as Kevin Stefanski has done, and it's been a miracle, some of these play calls in critical situations, I don't understand them. You play to your strength, always. Yeah. We didn't do that yesterday.
It reminds me, it's like, who do you want to take the last shot of the game? It's like basketball. If I've got LeBron or Kyrie, I want them to take the last shot, not, Channing Frye or Richard Jefferson per se. I want, if I'm going to go down, I would like to go down with my best player. My best player on the offense is Nick Chubb. Right?
Dino, that's always been my rule in sports, whether I was playing or whether I'm a fan and I'm watching. Know what your strength is and win or lose on that. Mm-hmm. And so I put everything in baseball terms. I'm a baseball guy. When I'm on the mound and it's a full count, bases loaded, I've got a 1-run lead in the bottom of the last inning, I'm not going to get cute and throw a fastball. I'm not. It's not my best pitch. I'm going to throw the pitch that I know I most frequently get over the plate, and also the pitch that I most frequently get swings and misses on. And for me, that's a cutter. And I don't even think about it. And it's almost as if, the player that might be in the batter's box knows what I'm going to do because that's what I've done. If they've faced me a number of times, they know when I'm in a pinch, you're getting my best pitch. I'm not going to get cute. I'm not going to try to fool you. I'm not going to outthink the situation. Oh, he's sitting, cutter, so I'm going to try to sneak a fastball by him. No, you're going to get my best pitch. I'm going to get your best plate appearance. May the better man win. And I just feel like when we get in these do or die situations, they never let it ride with Chubb. Never. And I'm telling you, my mantra with this team would be ride or die with Nick Chubb. He's been there. Now I know the line blocking had been atrocious. I get that. But you got 2 plays to get 2 yards to keep your dream alive. And they throw on one and they sneak on one. And the game and essentially the season, in my view, is over. I mean, I know they still have a chance to beat Pittsburgh, and there are a number of other wild scenarios that are highly unlikely that could happen, and maybe they will. But at this point, it's just super disappointing. And you're going to have to go, Dino, a long way to convince me. And I normally don't believe in this sort of stuff. You're going to have to go a long way to convince me that this franchise isn't cursed. It's time and time and time and time and time again. They pull you in, they take you to the very brink, as did the Indians. I mean, it's just kind of like at some point, enough is enough. You're getting gut punched time after time after time. A 1-13 team, go win and you're in the playoffs, and the misery of this city is over. And they can't do it.
Right.
And now they have to hope that Tomlin rests his starters and the Browns can pull out a win over the Steelers next week to try to back their way into the playoffs. It's just super disappointing.
A couple of just questions that I know fans have. This is obviously one of the points on your column this morning at WKYC.com. Did the Browns get penalized almost by the NFL because their contact tracing for coronavirus was so good, and they were able to, figure out, everywhere that BJ Goodson had been or what have you. And so they were able to identify close contacts and, put them on the list. Whereas, teams like Baltimore and Tennessee have had games postponed because
I don't have the answer to that, Dino. And the reason I don't is I know what the Browns are using with the wristbands. I don't know what the other teams are doing. I don't know if all 32 are employing that same technology. But I will say this, as much as I'd like to look at the NFL and blame them, because they deserve a lot of blame for certain things that have happened this year, their protocol is what it is. If you have players that are at high risk exposure, they have to be inactive. I get that. The reason the Ravens game was postponed was because of timing. It was a Thanksgiving Day game. They moved it a couple of times. They ended up playing it early in the next week. The schedule allowed them to do that. It also allowed them to get enough players cleared through the contact tracing protocol with the exposure and be eligible to play. Look, don't make any mistake about the following. The league is about 2 things, and in this order: making money and image. And that's it. This ruse that they're all about player safety is laughable. I know, Dino, personally, more than a half dozen NFL players who are still waiting for settlement money on the concussion settlement. Why is that? They lost. They agreed to pay that money out. Why the wait? If they truly cared about these players' long-term health and their current stability, they'd make good. This is $1 billion a year, multi-billion dollar a year organization. Yet at every turn, when you really dig deep into the evidence and you just don't look at the headline, NFL to pay players $1 billion in settlements, follow through on that. Find out how many of the players have received the money that they're owed. Will they ever see it? I doubt it. They claim that they're all interested and they're so concerned about the long-term health and stability of the players, yet their actions speak louder. Their actions speak louder than their words and their carefully crafted press releases. I don't buy any of it. So the notion that they're really concerned about players' safety this football season and they're doing their best to make sure that we don't have massive outbreaks amongst players, they're about one thing: the show must go on. They made the Denver Broncos play a game without a quarterback on its roster. That may be one of the most absurd things I've ever seen in professional sports. Yet the Ravens had the luxury of getting the game postponed and postponed and postponed, and now we're going to play it. They're just about the tickets constantly being, the games constantly being played. Get this TV revenue out there. Don't have any cancellations. Don't have any make goods to advertisers. Don't miss any big contracts for sponsorships. Get these games played, breathe a sigh of relief. And oh, by the way, if no one dies, that's a great thing too. But the show must go on. And it's really frustrating because their mantra all along has been, look, if you get a breakout, you're responsible for it. The Browns knew what the safety protocols were. And logically, if we're going to believe science and that masks and social distancing actually work, how did the Browns players get sick? Well, they must have broken protocol. They must have been in close proximity with no masks for extended period of times. And they know that their movements are being traced. You know, how can you be 6 feet from within? It's my understanding too that this exposure has to be extended more than 15 minutes at one time. What were receivers doing around a linebacker for more than 15 minutes? They're not sharing the same meeting rooms. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But look, the NFL will try to claim that, you know, they have the players' best interests and safety in mind. That's a joke. They don't. They're about image and making money and really not much else.
Okay, now also the notion of what is a fumble and what is a not fumble, what is not a fumble. Two things that happened during the course of the game. The strip sack, the what looked like, you know, a possible strip sack by Myles Garrett. Malcolm Smith pounces on the ball, runs it in, but the officials blow it dead, and
they blew
it ends up being,
they blew it.
I mean, it's been 20 years since the Tuck rule, and I still don't feel like we get this right consistently.
Every year, Dino, the officials are reminded by league officials. The game officials are reminded by league officials. When in doubt, hold off on a whistle. Hold off, because replay will clear everything up. I saw a play yesterday in which a Browns running back was scurrying for extra yards, and I'm waiting to hear the whistle because my fear is they're going to strip the ball out before the whistle blows. The player's progress was stopped for more than a second. It was a scrum in place. They hit the ground, and more than a half second later, the referee blew his whistle. More than a half second later. So they're showing great discipline on that play, yet on an incomplete pass where it's not important to blow the whistle, doesn't make any difference. They blow the whistle immediately.
Right.
And then what happened there, Dino, too, and I wish the league, here's the other thing. The paid announcers aren't at liberty to say what they really want to say, the truth, because they're bound and gagged by the league. Everybody in the league. Look, this nonsense that players and coaches can't criticize officials. That's a joke. That's a joke. So they make bad plays and refs and coaches and players aren't allowed to talk about it. You can't bring that up. Oh, no. Nope. As if fans can't see with their own eyes that the officials are horrible. And oftentimes replay never gets it right. Replay is supposed to fix human mistakes. What happened yesterday was, and I was dying for the play-by-play guys to talk about it. I knew they wouldn't. When they went to commercial break, I said instantly, that won't get overturned. Because to overturn it would be to, now what do? Where do they place the football? Right. We blew the whistle, so the Jets laid up. The player clearly took the ball into the end zone for a touchdown. It was a touchdown. And the Jets weren't going to stop them even if the whistle hadn't been blown. They weren't in a position to do it. So now the replay officials, in a real tough spot. You're thinking about two things. One, are we going to overturn this call? That's the most important thing. But second, and sometimes this impedes the first thing from happening, when we overturn it, what is the outcome? What do we do? It's like in baseball when a runner is told to go back to a base. Would he have scored or not? I don't know. You can use your best judgment and guess. At this point, the officials are screwed. one, they would have to admit that they were wrong, which they hate to do, and the league hates to do that to its officials. That's why the pass interference joke of a pass interference, when you could challenge pass interference for a brief moment, remember? And the officials, time after time after time, continued to stay with the call on the field, despite the fact everybody's eyes told them that's pass interference. They continued to stay with the call on the field. And now what happened? Well, that's no longer challengeable. We appeased the Saints. We screwed them out of a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Now we're going to take that rule out because we can't police it. We don't know how to enforce it. So the whole idea of replay is to fix the human mistakes on the field. They oftentimes just compound those mistakes.
Right.
That ball was out of his hands. Both of the announcers said it as clearly as they were allowed to. The ball was out of his hands. When his arm came forward, his hand was completely empty.
Correct.
That was a strip sack, fumble, touchdown, and it completely affected the outcome of the football game. And the league is too blind and ignorant to fix it. And so if you're not going to have, but you know what? Wait and see what happens if a big name player comes down with COVID in these playoff weeks. Do you think they're going to send the Chiefs out there without Patrick Mahomes?
No way.
Never. Not going to happen.
No way.
They'll start rescheduling and moving. And what if all four of the Chiefs' top receivers are out? You think they're going to make them go out there and play a playoff game? No,
Nope.
They won't do it. They'll find a way to make their own rules as the game goes along. And look, I know this is difficult. I know it's very difficult. I'm glad people smarter than me have to figure it out. But the problem is when the average fan looks at it and says, if this is your system, and that's they're hiding behind, by the way. McCarthy, the league spokesperson, is saying, oh, no, this is our system. We made this clear to the players at the beginning. Fine, great. Your system's broken. It's flawed. And at least college football at least fixed the problem as it was going on. The Buckeyes were going to miss the Big Ten game because they didn't meet the minimum requirement of 6 games. So what they do? They looked at the situation and they fixed it.
Yeah.
But the NFL can't do that. So when you can't even jump over the low bar that is set by college football, and that bar is very low too. When you can't even clear that, I tell you, it really makes me lose interest. For the first time in a long time, when the Browns game was over yesterday, I turned off TV. I didn't watch another NFL snap. I'm done.
Really? The rest of the day. Wow.
Didn't watch another play. Didn't watch another snap. Done with it. Completely done with it. This league needs to fix itself. And see, the problem is they don't think they're broken because the owners are swimming in dough. And they think Roger Goodell's doing a great job. They've got one criterion for judging Roger Goodell. How much money do I get in my bank account at the end of the season? Yeah. Roger Goodell's good at printing cash. He knows how to make money. But in terms of putting why is he booed at every public appearance he makes? Whether it's the draft or the Super Bowl, doesn't matter. When that guy shows his face around NFL fans, he needs a full core of security. Why?
Right.
Because the fans know that he's done a horrible job for the fan experience.
Right.
It's a joke.
Right. A couple other things here with Jay and after further review on this Monday morning. It may be irrelevant because the season could be over on Sunday, certainly for the Browns. But I know this, if they go into a playoff game, I'd feel awfully nervous about having the current place kicker kicking for the Browns in a playoff game. Yeah,
he's on a very, very, very short-term lease. What are you going to do? They don't fall out of trees. Someone's got to tell me or show me a better option. I'm sure the Browns have looked at guys. I know they have. But at the end of the day, you go with the best option that you have. And sadly, that's where this organization is. You know what's really disturbing is to see that there's 2 kickers that we've drafted in the last handful of years that are currently kicking for other NFL teams. That's troublesome.
Yes.
We thought enough of them to draft them. They missed some big kicks early in their careers, and we released both of them. And now both of them are kicking in the NFL for other teams. I don't know, man. It's called football for a reason. Kicking is a huge part of it. It was entirely possible that game would have come down to kicking. And look, the Jets had a field goal and extra point block too. So none of this is automatic stuff, but you better have a reliable kicker if you want to make a deep run in the playoffs, because at some point in time, that will get you. Go look at the long list of teams that don't have Super Bowl rings on their fingers because of a kicker. Do you remember, and this is a throwback, but I believe it was 99 maybe. The Minnesota Vikings were playing the Atlanta Falcons, and I want to say the
NFC Championship game.
The NFC Championship game, and I want to say that the Vikings were undefeated or had one loss. I think they were 15-1.
It was Randall Cunningham's big year. They were 15-1.
Yes, I think Randy Moss was a rookie.
Yeah,
and they had Morton Anderson. Was it Morton Anderson, their kicker?
Gary Anderson.
I
think it may have been more. Now you say
I thought it was Morton.
It may have been
one way or another. The guy was. I think he might have been perfect on the season, and he's a Hall of Fame kicker.
Yeah.
And he comes out to hit a chip shot to put his team in the Super Bowl, and he missed.
it.
The Buffalo Bills are the most. I always say that the Browns are the most tortured. Cleveland is the most tortured sports city in America. When I was at ESPN, we ran a 3-month-long series where we let fans vote. We did interviews with panels of sports writers, and we were looking for the United States most tortured sports city. It came down to Cleveland, Buffalo, San Diego, and I think Atlanta may have been in there. Well, at the end, I had a vote. I was on the panel. We had 40 sports writers on the panel. My vote was for Cleveland. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, of course you're going to vote for Cleveland. I'm like, no. It's very simple, guys. There's really nothing even close. When I laid out everything, it's a body of evidence that makes you go, holy cow, how does anybody root for any team from that city? The second for me was Buffalo, and that I think Buffalo finished second in our 3-month-long series. And really, Buffalo's torture comes to 4 straight Super Bowl losses, and who knows how history has changed. I believe it was their first of the 4. They lose to the Giants on a kick that just goes barely right at the last second.
Yep.
And, it's going to get you. At some point, a lack of a kicker is going to get you. So, look, the Browns, let's not kid ourselves, okay? Let's not kid ourselves. We thought that we were the real deal after the big Tennessee game, right?
Yeah.
Tennessee got smoke showed last night.
Big time.
I don't know if Tennessee's that great of a team. I don't. We beat the 10-5 now Colts. Colts are pretty good, but go look at some of their losses. They lost to Jacksonville in week 1. Okay, so this is not a juggernaut football team. I thought the Tennessee win was our signature win. Baltimore would have been a nice win. Didn't close the deal. And we gave up 45 points. So this team isn't playoff ready. They're just not. If we miss the playoffs, it's because we're not good enough. It's not because the league hit us hard and the officials suck and they can't get plays right. Those breaks, some of them you get, some of them you don't. But the reason the season is 16 games long is it gives you a large enough sample size that the breaks even out. You get some, you lose some. And at the end of the day, now the best 7 teams from each conference go. That's the way it works. And if the Browns don't get in, there's no complaining, there's no crying, there's no whining. They're not good enough. And at the end of the day, that might well be true. So even if they were to sneak into the playoffs as the 7th team in and somehow beat Pittsburgh or get any of those other crazy scenarios to fall their way, they're not going to make any noise. They're just not. The AFC is about Kansas City. And when I look, and I always say, during the course of a season, whether it's baseball, football, or basketball, I look at my team, and I don't ask, are they good enough to make the playoffs? That's just getting your foot into the party. Are they good enough to compete with the top 2 teams in your conference or league? And in this case, the top 2 teams, and this is debatable too, Kansas City, I think, is clearly the top team. After that, Pittsburgh has shown real weakness. So I don't know that I can put Pittsburgh in there. Buffalo looks like they probably are the second best team right now. I look at the Browns. Can they compete with the Chiefs and the Bills, if they were to play a 10-game series against both, could they beat both 6 times? Because that's what it would take to convince me that they're a better team. They might get lucky and beat them once or twice. They're not going to beat them 6 times, either one of them. There are too many holes on this football team that absolutely must be addressed in the offseason, and I'm guessing they will be with the draft. We got hammered with injuries. Look, it's the curse of the Browns, man. Everything that could go wrong went wrong, and here we are.
Yeah, Murphy's Law. Oh, by the way, yeah, Gary Anderson in 1998 hit all 35 of his field goals and all 59 of his extra points in the regular season. Didn't miss in the playoffs until the 99, 98 to 99.
Yeah, I remember that. I remembered it as Morton Anderson. You correctly said Gary. I just remember that, and I was covering the Buccaneers then. So
Morton played for the Falcons, I think, at that point. So it was Anderson.
That may well have been why I confused them. But I was working in Tampa at the time, and I had covered the Vikings because that's when the old NFC, the Buccaneers were in the old NFC Central.
Right.
And I remember going to Minnesota. I think it was the season opener. I remember going to Minnesota, and Randy Moss just went off. And I believe it was his first game as a pro. And I just thought, and I'd always followed him because I knew some friends that covered him in high school. And I was always a keen observer of Marshall. And I just felt like this guy's going to be a freak. I didn't know how good he was going to be. But that first game at the Dome, I just remember looking at my producer after what I think he had 3 touchdowns that day. And I remember saying, this guy's unstoppable. He's got everything. Hands, speed, and size. And he's a great route runner. And, if he doesn't derail himself or get hurt, he's going to put on a gold jacket one day. So I followed that Vikings team closely. And I just remember when they were lining up for that field goal, I actually said at the group of people that I was watching the game with, I'm like, if there ever was a lock, this is it. Because this guy hasn't missed all year. He's a Hall of Famer. It was a chip shot, too. I think it was inside 40 yards.
Yeah. What a long one.
It reminds me now of that Dr. Pepper commercial where the guy at the party says, oh, he's a lock to make it. He never misses. And then he misses, and then they come and arrest him. And they say, what's the charge? And you jinx the kicker. And then the next series of the commercials, he's at trial, and they're putting him on trial for jinxing the kicker. I did that to Gary Anderson 21 years ago when I said, if there's ever a lock for a team to go to a Super Bowl, here it is. This guy's missed all year, and he missed the kick. So is there a more reliable kicker through history? Maybe 3 or 4, maybe.
Right.
But he's clearly in the top 5 kickers that the game's ever known, and he missed the biggest kick of his career. And so you can't count on them because they're human. And it's almost unfair because if you were to judge, let's say, an offensive tackle, you're going to find plays that he wins, and you're going to find plays where he just is badly beaten. Even the best. I'll show you tape of Joe Thomas getting beaten. It happens. They're human beings. And so, I don't know that you change kickers at this point because, again, the option has to be better than what you have. And honestly, I know that this is going to sound off base, but Parkey was pretty reliable for almost the entire season. It's just recently here that he's found that penchant for hitting the posts again. I've never seen a kicker hit more posts in his career. And at seemingly really critical times. So I'm not worried about the kicker if we make the playoffs. I'm more worried about making the playoffs. And once we do, I'm more worried about a lot of other things. Why can't this team line up and tell the defense they're going to run the ball and successfully run the ball? Why can't they do that? They've got the best tandem of running backs in the NFL. Prove me wrong.
Right.
They've got the 3rd best rushing attack in the NFL, formerly, allegedly. And you got 4 yards on 9 tries in the first half. I don't, and look, I also know that Chubb has been his best in the 4th quarter. Why? Because they stay with him for the first 3 quarters. Typically, he's 13 carries, 44 yards going into the fourth quarter. And then he has 6 carries for 97 yards in the fourth quarter. Why is that? Well, there's a couple things going on. Number one, he's in terrific shape. He's not wearing down. But what he is doing through attrition, every time he gets the carry, he's taking a pound of flesh out of that defense. He's hitting guys harder than they want to be hit. And by the time crunch time rolls around in the fourth quarter, they're exhausted, they're on their heels, and he's going to end up breaking one. He's done it time and time again. But when you give the ball to your tandem running backs, which are the best tandem running back in the league, 15 times for the entire game. They had 18 rushes. 3 of those were Baker Mayfield's.
Right.
15 times Chubb and Hunt were given the ball in the backfield. 53 throws.
When you
What
didn't
is
have
that?
Jarvis
That's just
Landry
not
or Higgins
acceptable.
or anybody. Yeah. Yeah. That's going to be something that we're going to. I hope that we do this show next Monday and we're talking about a trip to the playoffs. But if we don't, we're going to be talking about that, for a long off season. I fear.
We've talked all year about something Kevin Stefanski's done, which I've always said is one of the hardest things for a new head coach to do. He walked in to the facility on Lou Groza Boulevard, and he's changed the culture. And he did it in a relative short period of time. What's at stake Sunday is the entire season. It's a playoff game.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. This is the start of the playoffs for the Browns. Win, and you get another game. Lose, and you're likely done. So this game will measure a lot of things. It will measure the improvement we've made in the culture. It will measure the heart of this team. They've overcome immense adversity already. I don't know what the roster is going to look like. Will they get the 4 receivers back? We hope. There's no guarantee. So it's going to measure a lot of things. Now, the Steelers may help the Browns immensely by resting a number of their starters. It would be the smart play. I would do that. Why would you throw Ben Roethlisberger out there in a game that if you win doesn't improve your scenario?
Right.
It doesn't help him. What if he, damages his shoulder, turns a knee, God forbid, ends his season or career? It's not worth it. I wouldn't roll those dice.
No.
But look, I mean, that's a decision that all coaches make. Belichick's decision on issues like that is we're football players. That's what we do. We don't think about getting hurt. We never think about getting hurt. Injuries happen. We're aware of that. Let's go play. He may take that approach. I probably give them the first half. And here's why. Their previous 10 quarters of football were abysmal. Right. Abysmal. They didn't look like a team that needed to be anywhere near the playoffs. The last 2 quarters of football, they looked like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They did. They did what the Browns should have been able to do against a 1-13. The Steelers did it against a 10-4 that was also playing for its playoff life. So I want to keep that momentum going, at least for the first half. Yeah. Yeah. Go out there, have a couple of long touchdown sustaining drives, get them out of the game at halftime, 21-3, whatever. And it just reinforces what we did the last half of the Colts game wasn't a fluke. We're good to go. Let's catch our breath and regroup for the playoffs. So if I'm Tomlin, that's how I play it. I don't know what he's going to do. He hasn't said. He may not say until kickoff. He may not say. So we're going to find out, though, about this Browns team. We're going to find out a lot. Here's the most troubling thing for me. Inside the division, the Browns are currently 2-3. They needed a Hail Mary on the last play of the game to beat the Bengals the second time. They needed to recover an onside kick the first time to hold on to another shootout. Those games, a bounce here, a break there, anything.
Could have gone either way.
They could be 0-5 in the division. Yeah. That's not a playoff team by any stretch. No. They're a product of an easy schedule. I've said that all season long. They've had some wins that at the time looked nice, but in retrospect, look a lot cheaper now than they did then. But this is it. All the marbles, all the chips in the middle of the table. Everybody knows what this game means. Let's hope they get everybody healthy. Let's hope no one is sick for their personal safety, number one. Secondly, for the future of this football team. And let's go out there and see if they can beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They haven't done it in forever. They can't make the playoffs if they are 0-4 against the top two teams in the division. That is almost impossible. It shouldn't happen. And then you've got a team from the NFC that's going to get into the playoffs with a losing record from the NFC East. Go figure.
One of those quirky years. That's 2020 for you in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's it. That's 2020.
Yeah.
You know what I'm most glad about, Dino?
What's that?
When we play the Steelers, it will be 2021.
Yes, you're right. I agree.
Let's put this dumpster fire that is 2020 in our rearview mirror forever, and let's go out there and beat the hell out of the Steelers, punch that playoff ticket, and let this city, at least for a day, celebrate a successful season. You'll think about the playoff game when you get to it. You take them one at a time. You can't win it if you don't get there. Let's just put this nightmarish season behind us by getting a victory and getting that cork out of the 17-year-old bottle of champagne. This is just ridiculous. Enough already.
Yeah,
almost half the league makes the playoffs, and this team hasn't made it in 17 years. Come on.
Time for that to be over. My friend, Happy New Year to you and yours.
And to you, Dino.
As always, we appreciate it, and we will look forward to no matter how it plays out. We'll talk about it next Monday and figure out where we go from here.
Yes, we will. Good luck to Cleveland.
Good luck, everybody. Thanks for watching After Further Review here on WKYC.com.
See you, Dino.
All right. See you, Jay. Thanks, man.
You bet.